So what's the connection for you guys between, listen, what I like to call the business of television and what Dave kind of set up, right? There's this premium video world, premium content world is often referred to, but certainly it's the ecosystem that grew up from the legacy broadcast cable television ecosystem, that we know. That versus the obviously what's popular today also is content is consumed in feed, right? Typically it's a different format, it's different length, it's a much more short form snackable content typically, but quite clearly also capturing consumer attention in a different way. How do you think about it? We focus on video, I don't want to get broader beyond that. How do you guys balance and thinking about the right consumer experience that might be for a full screen in a living room versus a small tablet or a phone versus an in-feed versus a full screen experience? Do you guys think about telling stories differently in those different environments?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have to, we're kind of talking about you have to change everything from the very beginning. So you kind of need to understand where you're going to be having conversations with consumers at all different parts of the channel. So if it's going to be on something that's a set-top box, or if it's going to be something that's actually an in-feed, you need to actually have that from the beginning stage, so more from the briefing. And then that way you can develop content and how the stories are going to change depending on how consumers are actually going to be digesting it.
Yeah.
I think it's really different. I feel like in-feed, the role of advertising, if you step back a moment, is first of all, you want to get a consumer's attention, and then you want to persuade them of something. In a feed, you're competing for attention in a very different way because, one, people, at least to date, are not necessarily expecting video. That's not why they're there. They're catching up on news, they're catching up on updates from friends. They're there for a different kind of experience. They're not anticipating that they're going to be given a video message. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the time spent. We see it. They're moving past really quickly. So you have a moment to get their attention, but I don't know how easy it is, and you guys can tell me better, to translate that into then persuasion. Whereas I think what's different about sort of a long-form environment and what's different about an engagement ad format is, you have the consumer. They've opted in to give you their attention. They're highly engaged. And now you have this beautiful canvas of sight, sound, motion, and interaction that you can use to persuade. It's a little bit different, I think.
Yeah.
Exactly. We come to it from a lens of the purchase journey and having that be our filter. And because we have a database we call Momentum with a study of 400,000 purchase journeys, we start to tease out then at what point do you serve up content to build brand bias, to then move them through the journey into purchase, understand, and optimize. Yeah. So with that as a framing, it's attempting to do both and get away from the world of brand versus performance and just understanding where, at what point in the journey we are, what we should serve up, in what context.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. Sequencing is really, really important.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
At the same time, John, the idea, again, back to this notion of that a standard ad pod on a show that's going to continue, right? I mean, part of what we are talking about is new formats being invented for the TV screen as well. Obviously, Pooja, that's what a lot of you guys do at Truex, but just in general, right? There is a push. John, you mentioned the new jazz pods. There's clearly whether it's screen in screen, it's overlays, just a shorter pod. It's one long form commercial. Are there things you're more or less excited about that you're seeing invented? Is it a little bit of try all of it and see what sticks? And if that's true, how do you think about what to test and what to try?
I think it's a little bit of everything, to be honest with you. But I think again, we're seeing a little bit of a shift from just considering the hard data to considering some of the emotive cues. It's not just where someone is, it's not just who someone is, it's not just what they're doing, it's really how they're feeling in that particular moment. And how do we take those emotive cues and give it equal emphasis as we do some of the more demographic data and some of the hard facts and figures that we're so used to absorbing.
I heard yesterday in conversation, there was a time when a 15-second ad was innovative, and then a 6-second ad was innovative. And again, I think we all have the same reaction, like, oh, we shortened it. What did we really do? But we somehow had to get that to even be an option. Now, again, we're talking about engagement ads, which I bet, Pooja, with maybe in the shortest form possible, because I don't really want to open up the aperture to you pitch Truex too aggressively here, right? But at the same time, maybe you can give a quick brief on what we're talking about, the idea of an engagement ad. What do you guys even make possible?
So the core of the engagement ad is the idea that it's 100% consumer opt-in, and you put it in an environment where the consumer is already engaged. I believe engagement ads only belong in front of truly premium and compelling content, because then you can actually offer a value exchange. Do you want to spend a guaranteed 30 seconds with a brand, or would you rather have a standard commercial experience? The consumer chooses to come in. once they come into that experience, first of all, they can leave at any moment that they would like, and that's not billed back to the advertiser. But I think the key thing is you can do so much in that environment. You can tell your story as richly as you want. You can use, it can be shoppable. You can use text. You can have a gallery of videos. And we've done some incredible work with Nissan where, we've gotten to talk about both, a new model of the Leaf as well as, Disney's A Wrinkle in Time. And that's a lot to get across even in a 30. But when you've got this rich canvas, you can really go deeper. And I think that's what engagement is all about.
Yep. Great, very useful. So, thank you. And so, Amanda, one of the things that we were talking about when prepping is, so there's this balance now of wanting to do things like that, to provide rich experiences, and the challenge of things that are becoming custom. And one of the things that the digital marketplace dealt with was getting too far afield. So how do you guys think about balancing what we know, I think all of us in this industry know, we need more innovative engagement formats like that. We can't just rely on standard ad units. But we can't, again, every media partner, you can't have a different thing. Certainly part of what Truex hopes is to wire it up. But from a client side, that's still got to be something you guys have to manage as well.
Absolutely. And you want to choose your partners wisely. Yeah. Because there is a potential risk right now where there's an new ad format fatigue, where everyone is coming out with different formats, and it almost harken back to the early digital days before standards, where from all of that, yes, some opportunities for innovation. Because it came at such a pace, though, you really didn't get the time to absorb the learnings and focus, so it just became another version of spray and pray with new ad formats. Yeah. What I see opportunities like Truex with is this commitment to let's have a lab environment, or let's really focus on the learnings across a few different formats, understand the measurement, understand the operational impact, all the way through billing, because that's what really matters, too, when it comes to scaling solutions. So go deep on a few partners, have a nice portfolio maybe of ad formats within those partners, and make sure they have skin in the game as well. And I think that'll get the best learnings versus putting it all out there and testing every format available.
Great. And Allison, one of the things I know you and I have spent time talking about is as you do these new things, you have to actually measure new things too. And that doesn't easily make its way through a big organization, right? I mean,
Correct.
So I'm guessing there's a link between trying these new things and figuring out how to improve business impact. And how does that look inside?
Absolutely, because I think overall the measurement is still pretty straightforward and still what the measurement has been for the last several decades. And so I think what we're trying to look at least on the Nissan side, is how can we actually start adding value-based metrics along with more of the standard formats or more of the standard measurement. But I think it's also kind of going into what are you trying to get out of it, and then how do you actually need to measure it. Lead generation is a big thing in automotive, but that may not be the most important metric for an individual experience. So we have to really look at by experience, what are the types of things that we're trying to achieve, and then how do you need to measure it? And then we're trying to wire our organization, and purchasing is one of the biggest ones, and they've been really open to it about how do we actually change how the measurement is? Because I think if we keep measuring agencies and media performance based on the last several decades, we're never really going to advance what we need to do.
Yeah, let's go down that path further. I mean, I kind of led us into one of the things we talked about is the barriers to seeing this innovation, and measurement I just kind of led us into is one of them. You mentioned there's a procurement process, there's a buying process, or legacy systems along those lines. Maybe let's explore that for a second as well. I mean, guys, listen, this innovative, non-standard stuff is happening. I don't know what percentage we would attribute it to in terms of total dollars spent in video, but I certainly would all say less than 20%, maybe even a lot less than that, less than 10, I was going to say.
Maybe less than 5.
Right, so we're clearly talking about where we're going, not completely where we are, right? But listen, I think we should probably be glass half full versus glass half empty, which is it's growing. But part of getting to a point where we find that the non-standard is standard is breaking down barriers. What do we have to do to be here next year or the year after, and this be commonplace?
I think one of the challenges is that as different formats come to life, it's the industry's natural tendency to productize it, and along with that, and then what happens is we try and force fit that into some sort of traditional or legacy measurement structure, and the two don't always meet, and I think that we just need to figure out different ways of looking at different measurement systems that better match the types and formats that are coming out faster than ever before.
Do you have a sense, and you guys can all weigh in, but John, maybe just follow up with you and then get your guys' perspective. Is it agency-led? Is this client-led? Is it the sales companies that need to bring new solutions? It feels like there's enough out there now and that the change is more on both, and you guys
Right.
on the buy side, that seems where there's more friction still in the
I
process.
think there's everyone's kind of trying to attack it, but they're all in their own swim lanes, and I think we need to come together, and it's got to be intentional. Like we're calling it radical collaboration. It's got to be intentional and deliberate, and I think we collectively need to come together to tackle it. I don't think any one party alone can do it. I really don't.
Yeah. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, we've been working on a couple of things that we think are really important if the non-standard, if you will, is going to become more of the mainstream standard. And it doesn't mean an engagement ad is the right thing at every moment of the consumer journey. Like I firmly don't, not trying to say that, but it's the idea that where somebody is would determine the right experience to serve them. And who they are, and there's so many different context data points, even what day part you're in, all of those things matter. But how do you have the opportunity to be integrated with all of the various formats you'd want to potentially use at scale? And this goes back to Dave's point about how can TV be a platform, across platforms. And the second piece is how do you have measurement that goes across that allows you to then compare two things that are not the same to one another and understand what's actually driving you forward and what combinations are most powerful to drive it forward. Some of the work we've been doing is around brand lift measurement. We created a measurement suite called Uplift, and it was invented and created ostensibly so we could demonstrate the impact the engagement ad format had. But what we've begun to do this year is with a few select partners is roll it out onto just FEP video. It's inventory that Truex has nothing to do with selling or serving or creating, but it's this idea that this way, that publisher can, one, see how that video is being scored as it relates to how is it driving a brand forward. It could be used as a score of quality, or on the buy side, it could help you begin to think about how do I pair these different formats with one another? Because the idea of is this doing something for my brand versus was it in target, was it viewable, did it deliver where it was supposed to, which are important metrics, but they're baseline. You'd want that measurement on everything you buy. And that's, I think, the common thread you want to pull across as we start to figure out the right way to do this.
That's great. That idea of how do you unlock data so that we can all understand what's performing, what isn't, and adjust. There's one piece of measurement that we don't talk about much, and that's really the financial measurement. And that's fueling a lot of the innovation investment or what can or cannot be spent and invested in this space. I mean, the role that procurement plays in innovation is huge. Because ultimately they can either unlock and allow the opportunity to lean into some of these new formats and spend in that way and invest, or they can control and say, nope, it's year after year, it's like for like, and you're going to be judged only by the money that you save, which tends to lead just to measurement only being by the CPM costs. So until we bring them into the conversation, it feels like we're still going to have this log jam of only so much money can be spent on innovation because we're not being judged by anything other than pricing.
And I think that's what we've done, at least on the Nissan side, is we have brought them into the conversation because I think it is a really sobering moment to see, and you actually look at the metrics and seeing, okay, people aren't actually watching and engaging with our content. That's really, really sobering. And so then the next conversation is, okay, then how do we need to actually work with our media partners? How do we work with the agencies? So we can start to look into and explore more innovative type of platforms and formats for us to be able to test this. And so I think kind of bringing them along in that process has been, it's not perfect, but they're open to it. And I think that was kind of the aha moment for me, is that they're actually kind of dying for this innovation as well, because they've been doing the same thing over and over again. They don't know any different. And so when you actually kind of brought them into this is what the solution is, they were really open to it.